And today I'm going to do a movie review of 2 Days in the Valley from 1996, starring James Spader, Danny Aiello, and introducing, at the time, Charlize Theron. Wow. This was the era, this was the mid-late 90s, so this was the era of Quentin Tarantino. And Reservoir Dogs, I believe, was released in 1992, and Pulp Fiction came out, I believe it was like winter or fall of 1994. So pretty much after Pulp Fiction caught on and was a massive, gigantic box office success, you just had these Tarantino knockoffs, is what you call them. And I think Quentin Tarantino himself, you guys can look on the internet, there's an interview he did about the knockoffs that came out kind of in the mid and late 90s. Movies like this, Love in a 45. There's a couple of other ones that I can't think of, but those are the ones. Those are the Tarantino knockoffs that spring right to mind. Killing Zoe is one of them, which was made by his co-writer. I remember renting 2 Days in the Valley from Blockbusters. I'm gonna date myself. I was a freshman in high school, and I always thought the film was just okay. And I literally had only seen the film once, until one of my boys, Baby Maneth, who's one of my longtime subscribers and viewers, asked me to do the film. This kind of does just like a Quentin Tarantino movie, where you have all of these multiple various characters who are basically all unrelated, and they kind of have all their different little stories going on, in which case they all merge to become part of one ultimate big storyline or plot of the movie. And there's a lot of Tarantino-isms in the movies, kind of stuff with, classic R&B kind of blues music from the 60s or 70s playing in the background to these very offbeat, different kind of eccentric characters. And of course it has to have this crime thriller plot, which I don't want to go into. I don't want to spoil it for you all out there. You guys got to watch the film for yourselves. I don't want to give anything away, because there are some pretty good twists and turns within this film that kind of start to develop in the second and third act of the movie. My feeling about 2 Days in the Valley is that it's so badly, whether intentional or not, feels like it wants to be a Tarantino movie, and it's clearly not. From just, to me, in my personal opinion, most of these characters in this movie are bland, to me. And I think they're boring and they're uninteresting. Minus James Spader, who is always excellent. James Spader has always been one of my favorite actors. Obviously I've been watching him since I've been a child in the 80s. He's always been awesome. He can do anything. Of course, James Spader has gotten up there in age, and he's kind of lost the lovely blonde locks that he used to have, so he's not the James Spader of this time. But again, he's still an excellent actor. He still has that kind of smooth, cool, mellow charisma that he brings to this ice-cold hitman. He was perfect for this role. Danny Aiello, who's a classic actor, who of course was in Do the Right Thing and tons of various other movies. Although I don't find his character that interesting on his own, but juxtaposition to James Spader's character in the very beginning of the movie, I find those two's dynamic is very good, because Danny Aiello is an honorable type of guy, and James Spader obviously is just an ice-cold hitman. This was the introduction of Charlize Theron at the time, and this movie made me, I forgot how hot Charlize Theron was when she first came. I mean, she is beautiful in this movie. And this movie was a perfect introduction to her, because like all Hollywood productions, any lovely lady has to kind of, sell out and, take them clothes off, which she does very well in this film. And it's probably one of my favorite scenes, if not one of the best scenes of this entire movie. There's other characters. There's this art dealer guy. And then there's the lady from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I forget the actress's name. I should have looked it up before I recorded. But she's been in many things. She plays like the assistant to the art dealer, which she's always been a charismatic actress. I love her. But her character is just a bore to me. The art dealer guy, I absolutely could not stand him. The movie director guy, there's a movie director guy whose movies have been bombing, and, people are making fun of him, and he's suicidal. He's got this dog, and the dog kind of gives him a little will to live, but he's just boring and uninteresting. There's a nurse character who meets up with him. I don't think she's very interesting either. You add in Terry Hatcher's actually in the movie too. And you know, Terry Hatcher, I've always kind of been here nor there about it. You know, I always got rubbed the wrong way by her when I heard how difficult she was on Tomorrow Never Dies. I remember Pierce Brosnan doing an interview on Entertainment Tonight where they were like, "How was it working with Terry Hatcher?" And he was like, "She was a very nice girl." But she's really good, and her character has a really interesting arc in this movie. And there's a really good fist fight between her and Charlize Theron, which was heavily promoted at the time. I had actually forgotten about that fight scene. And it's just as cool now as it was back then. Then we got Eric Stoltz, and we got Jeff Daniels that pop up in this movie. Those characters, they're cops. I don't find them interesting the slightest bit. Eric Stoltz kind of shows some humanity and some warmth, kind of the stuff that he showed in Garbage Like the Fly 2, and of course in The Excellent Some Kind of Wonderful. He's always had an earnest warmness beneath him, and it's funny that even when Eric Stoltz plays creeps in movies, a la The Butterfly Effect, there's still a warmth that he has to him. Jeff Daniels, this guy is way overwrought, way. Now, interesting thing is, I had forgotten, because it's been so long since I've seen the movie, that there's a reason for why he's so overwrought. But most of the movie, I was like, man, what is this dude's problem? But there's a really good twist to his character, and it makes total sense. And I will say that was a really good payoff. I enjoyed that payoff to Jeff Daniels' character, and in particular, Terry Hatcher's character is a really good payoff to their characters, which I won't give away. Most of the side characters are boring, which in Tarantino movies, none of the characters are boring. Even like, you know, you look at Pulp Fiction, Marvin is interesting, you know, and even Frank Wiley, the guy from Career Opportunities who gets blown away with the big kahuna burger, even he's interesting. And he just, even Alexis Arquette or I can't remember, Alexis or Donna Arquette, you know. But the scene stealers here are Charlize Theron and James Spader. I mean, they run this movie. This is their movie. And I think this movie, upon rewatching again, would have been much more interesting if it was more of them. And also, in my opinion, I think Spader's character would have been better had he not have an attachment, like a loving attachment, because this dude is so sociopathic and psychopathic that I guess I could see that maybe he maybe possibly could think he loves somebody, but he's so flat and cold, and he's so calculated. I don't think he's really capable of it. And Danny Aiello, like I said, when he's working across Spader's character, which in the beginning is a chilling scene where Spader is kind of listening in on this conversation between Terry Hatcher and her soon-to-be ex-husband, played by, I believe the actor is Peter Horton, who, you know, those of us 80s and 90s teenagers, 40-somethings like me, I used to always get him mixed up with Steven Weber from the TV show Wings and the Shining TV movie with Rebecca De Mornay. But I think is it Peter, what is his name? Is it Peter Horton? I think it's Peter Horton. I can't remember. But I always get him mixed up with Steven Weber. And I remember he did that real awesome movie with C. Thomas Howell that used to air on Cinemax like all the time back in the early 90s, that volleyball movie called Side Out. Come on. Those of us old folks, who used to watch Side Out with C. Thomas Howell and Terry Hatcher's husband in this movie back in the early 90s? Anyway, I digress too far, but I used to love Side Out. You see how calculated Spader's character is. It's basically, essentially what you're listening to is basically an assault is about to take place upon Terry Hatcher from her husband. And Spader is just listening to the whole thing, and Danny Aiello is trying to figure out like what's going on, but it's just him just getting a kick out of an act of violence that's about to take place, and he's just listening to it. Oh, and also the gentleman who was in Reservoir Dogs. There's a Quentin Tarantino attachment in this movie. The gentleman who sets up the job, the guy's father, Chris Penn's father from Reservoir Dogs, he pops up in this movie for a very tiny role. I just caught that when I watched it. I said, oh man, there's a little tiny connection there. But I think ultimately for me, also, and I don't want to digress too far, you know who else shows up in this movie? Michael Jai White. You know, mostly I don't really care for this film, but I think probably what would have honestly made this movie better, in my opinion. I mean, I still just think it's okay, but I think probably what would have made this movie better was, number one, if I think this movie should be told out of order, like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I think part of the problem is that this movie is told linear. All in all, 2 Days in the Valley, upon revisiting, I think the only thing worth watching in this film, in my opinion, are some reveals later on in the second and third act. But it's mostly the stuff that involves Spader, Charlize Theron, and Terry Hatcher. So, if you don't like Quentin Tarantino ripoffs and harsh language and bloody violence, why don't you go ahead and watch The Bridges of Madison County, folks? That movie's just for you. All right, y'all. I'm going to be back more... what am I going to be back? More... Y'all know what I mean.